impact and implications of COVID-19 on global higher education, hosted by the Society of Transnational Academic Researchers, abbreviated name STAR. So my name is Shuning Liu. I am an assistant professor in curriculum studies at Ball State University. I'm also the director of international education research and development at STAR network, Scholars Network. So I will be monitoring today's webinar. STAR Scholars Network is an international forum of scholars that aim to advance global social mobility by using research and advocacy. We initiated a STAR COVID-19 webinar series. The theme of this series is public health and education in a transnational society. The motivation to organize and host this webinar series is to help the public, especially educators, researchers from different disciplines, other professionals, and community members understand the power of the marriage public health and education in our global society. Public health is a caring profession, as does education. So I acknowledge my colleagues, Dr. Uttam Gali, the STAR president, and Dr. Christina Bista, STAR Vice President of Education Service, for the teamwork of planning this webinar. Dr. Gali would like me to pass on his greeting to the audience. So Dr. Bista is helping us in technology during the webinar. So again, we offered a series, a webinar series on COVID-19. In addition to the webinar that you are attending now, we will have an upcoming webinar on COVID-19 and the economics of education scheduled on June 13 at 10 a.m. You are welcome to register this, the upcoming event as well. So now, please join me to welcome three panelists, Dr. Pilar Mendoza and Dr. Fredy Cárdenas and Dr. Anatoly Yanko, as well as our guests who are joining the webinar this morning. So Dr. Mendoza and Dr. Cárdenas are both directing the International Research Center for the Development of Education. It is a joint effort between Minuto and the University of Missouri. In addition, Dr. Yanko and Dr. Mendoza are the co-chair of the higher education interest group of the Comparative and International Education Society. In addition, today we have Mr. Mauricio is scheduled to serve as our translator. He is a doctoral student in educational leadership and public policy at University of Missouri. So panelists, as you can see from the screen, so in the next 14 minutes, our panelists will discuss the impact of COVID-19 on higher education in the US, Cambodia, and Hong Kong. They will discuss the specific effects of the pandemics on the home institutions, as well as how these institutions are coping with the pandemics, including new initiatives and planned for the rest of the academic year. So now, Dr. Mendoza, are you ready for your presentation?
Yes, I am. Do you want, okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. It's great to see you all. Great energy in the chat here. Can you please confirm to me that you can see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have a great session today. I hope you enjoyed. We're going to talk about the impact of higher education, of the pandemic in higher education in the East, in the West, in the North, and the South. We're going to provide very specific factual information, but also a lot of food for thought. I hope you enjoyed. So I'm going to talk about my university in the US, which is really representative of what is happening in this country in terms of impact to higher education of the pandemic. So here we have data from the Johns Hopkins Press globally. We are seeing flattening the curve. Somehow it is happening. Of course, that depends on the number of testing we're doing, but it is flattening. But it is not quite flattening like South Korea. I mean, this has become the role model. You can see they were fast and furious. Everybody's trying to understand how to manage to get to that point. We have the case of Italy that has been on the news. They have flattening the curve. And the US is heading in that direction, as you can see from this data. Now the epicenter of the pandemic is in Latin America, and we can see Colombia is not quite flattening the curve yet. However, Colombia is one of the better off countries right now. Part of this data has to do with testing, so we need to keep in mind that the more you test, the more cases you have. But this is also true in the US. It's happening daily, and yet the curve is flattening, starting to flatten. So maybe the measure of deaths might be a better indication, although if you don't test, you don't know how many people are really dying from COVID either. Now, the US is a huge country. Each state should be considered on its own, not only because of its size, because of the way the government works in this country. So yes, it is true that the federal government and the president provide guidelines and important support, but what matters the most is what each governor is doing. And even within each state, there is a fairly amount of flexibility within cities and counties on how to apply these policies and this support. So here we have the case of New York, the hardest hit in the US. You can see the difference in populations of both of these states. Very different scenarios. Boone County is where my city, where the University of Missouri Columbia is located, a very different scenario. Now, when we think about the reason why I picked Arizona is because it has about the same population of Missouri, and if you notice, it's still trending up. They did have a problem with testing at the beginning. Obviously, it's not that there were 0 cases. So they're probably testing a lot more now, but still it is trending up. Missouri, where I'm from, is starting to look more like New York and Italy. Now the deaths, we have to keep in mind that they are unequal, and this is representative of disparity, historical disparities in access to healthcare, the type of jobs where certain populations are in, pre-existing conditions, which again is a measure of inequities in society. So for example, this is a very telling graph, and we don't need to forget these disparities in how the pandemic is affecting groups differently, countries differently, regions differently. In the US, per 100,000 deaths, 50 are African American and just over 20 white, just to give you an example. And this is more complicated now as more research like this one is coming out. For example, the meat plants in the US are heavily, the workforce are heavily immigrant Latinos, and they are becoming a real focus of the epidemic right now. So we're going to keep seeing these, what I call the color of COVID, unfortunately. So what happened at Missouri? This is the chain of event. The first case was in March 7th that we know. Now we know that the virus was circulating early on. This was the first confirmed. And look how quickly things evolved from all classes moved online throughout the summer to you have to work. April 12th, the campus basically was evacuated. Everybody had to leave campus. And the governor increasingly put from practice social distance to stay home order. And right now, we are at the end this week of the first phase of the opening of the economy. Next week, we start with phase 2 of 3. 3 is basically business as usual. We'll see how long we're gonna last in phase 2. And little by little, businesses are starting to open, and so the university. How to open the economy? It's guided by Missouri's response plan. And again, each state has their own. However, it is based in the CDC, the federal guidelines on how to reopen. It has 4 main principles: testing, 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 and contact tracing. Every state is revamping not only testing for COVID, but antibodies testing. The expansion and investment in protective equipment for first responding is also happening, making sure that hospitals can not only attend the cases of COVID-19, but business as usual. People still need health care as usual. and being able to predict how the epidemic is evolving. So based on those principles, the universities now just received guidelines on how are we going to reopen, and also schools. The truth is that it's very difficult to open the economy if schools are not open, right? Because parents cannot have the kids at home and work at the same level, at the same time, in the same amount of time. So what is happening with higher education? Well, it's not good news. It is all over the news. Leaders are under tremendous stress, or how are they going to reopen? Because at the end of the day, this is turning into a very big financial burden for universities. So this is an example of the news that we hear now on a daily basis. We're having significant layoffs, furloughs, universities saying we will open, but we will start earlier. We will go online. Some schools don't know if they're going to open in the fall. Those discussions are there. What is going to happen with high school graduates who are planning to start college, to move to a college town? They're having second thoughts, so on and so on. So let's talk about the University of Missouri, which is the flagship university of the state. That means that is the university that serves the state and is heavily involved in research and in educating the workforce for the state. So here by the numbers, you can see we are part of a system of 4 campuses. The one in Columbia, Missouri is the larger one. We are heavily involved in research, the faculty, but we also provide a great deal of service for the state. And actually the impact of the University of Missouri in the economy of the state annually is $3.9 billion. So what happened in Missouri? Well, suddenly in mid-March, classes were canceled. So that means that faculty who had never taught online before had to move online. Some of them never, others had more experience, but some faculty had difficulties even with connectivity of equipment at home, and so students. Some classes are based on experiential instruction. They had to be in the lab, in the field, or even internships that are required for graduation. All those had to be suspended. This is a residential college, meaning that students come and live on campus during their college experience or in town. And they have to suspend. The campus was evacuated. So the university tried as hard as they could to move all the services for students online. But since we have students living here, students' life is a 24/7 in Denver. It's always ongoing. We are a big athletic school. We are part of the Southern Eastern Conference, the top athletic conference in the nation. And for the first time in history, athletic events have been suspended. All faculty and staff had to work from home, but some couldn't because of the nature of the work that requires to be on site. This is where we're starting to see furloughs and layoffs. And many faculty and staff found themselves homeschooling their children, which means that cut significantly their work time. We do have a hospital in the university, and all non-critical visits, procedure, surgeries were suspended. And of course, that created issues of staffing and a significant revenue losses for the hospital. The dorms have to be closed, but some students could not return home because home is overseas and the borders are closed. So the dorms did stay open for those students that was absolutely impossible to return home, and there are still some students living in the dorms. The university had to refund families for room and board, and that was a tremendous financial impact for the university. This was money that was already committed for the fiscal year and suddenly had to be returned. We are a research-intensive university. Most of the faculty could not continue collecting data, working in their labs, doing field work, going to conference meetings, travel for work. All that was halted. Many of these research is sponsored by the federal government or NGOs, so it has contractual agreements, so there's a lot of stress on the part of faculty how to deal with that. Graduate students, PhD students, many could not complete, there's waiting to be able to conduct their research for their dissertations. All travel suspended. Everybody who was overseas had to come back. Faculty, students, and staff, all study abroad suspended. And of course, we are in a big immigration issues for international students. Many had their visa expires, but the federal government has closed their immigration services. They're starting to reopening, and they're very stressed from the legal perspective or their status, since they cannot return home. All this has created a major budget constraint in the university. This fiscal year, we had to return $17 million to the state, and also all the gaps created by closing the campus halfway. This was money that we were counting on for this year. In addition, we're facing 10–15% cut for the next fiscal year. We anticipate a decline in enrollment. These are nationwide studies that are telling us students are not going to enroll at the same rate. That 25% in auxiliary revenues are all the residential life that students might not come next fall. So we are anticipating these cuts, and right now, unfortunately, we are facing hundreds of layoffs and furloughs and restructurings, and we're probably going to be seeing closure of programs. The class of 2020 graduated to a very uncertain market. So this is very nerve-wracking. And again, when you graduate and you're on a student visa, you have 30 days to return home. A lot of international students cannot, but they cannot work either because of the visa status and because there's no jobs available. And they're under tremendous stress. And we are very concerned about them, and we're trying as much as we can to help them. They do not qualify to a lot of the federal social services in those circumstances. And even for all students, there is a growing nationwide concern about the mental health of students. So the university has tried very hard to keep as many services available online and put new ones like social events, professional development for faculty. Teaching online is a big one. The university has been very good at keeping the communication open through emails continuously and town hall meetings. We put the pass-fail grade option available, so faculty can decide to grade students more lightly if that's the situation. The expectations of faculty productivity has been relaxed. For example, stopping the tenure clock for untenured faculty. We relaxed HR policies in terms of sick leave and other ones. And slowly we're starting to allow some faculty to return in phases. So the big question is, how is fall 2020 going to look like? The CDC, which is the federal government, released the guidelines for higher education. And of course, we can have a whole webinar on schools, of course, with this discussion. And it's all about risk management. The virus is going to be here, it's going to stay. So most likely, we're going to be in this yellow middle ground of we have to follow those guidelines, have these measures in order to operate. So we're planning on a in-person fall, but with a new normal. How does the new normal can look like? So yesterday, the faculty, got this article from the Chronicle of Higher Education to give you an idea how it might look like. So the dorms are gonna have less capacity. They're probably gonna close social areas. They're probably gonna designate a dorm for quarantine purposes. Classes are going to be reduced. We need to keep social distancing. So we're going to have, they're talking about putting a shield to protect the lecturer. We're going to have lanes, one-way lanes. In the social areas, no more buffets, hot food. There's going to be more grab and go, minimize visitors. We're going to minimize the seating, lanes. This is all about reducing the amount of individuals in a space, in a closed space. So the university, this is a tremendous endeavor in the summer to rearrange the entire layout and classes deliveries to be able to accommodate that, being ready to move online if needed, if we regress to a phase 1 or even earlier, hopefully not. So I wanted to close though with amazing Rise to Education projects at all pockets of the community at the University of Missouri are engaged, students, departments, staff, faculty, and we see new initiatives like, for example, CARES which is part of the extension of the university, created a dashboard by county. This is a hub that connects local farmers with local businesses in the food chain, because there are food shortages, and also to help local businesses and farmers. And we always see these news letters with faculty, students involved in creating PPE for first responders. We try very hard to keep experiences for undergraduates, such as the undergraduate annual research conference. We did it online. There's a lot of faculty doing research in the health sciences related to COVID-19, and so on and so forth. It has been very inspiring to see how the community has risen to the occasion to attend to whatever they can to the needs to get us through this period. So with that, that's all what I have for you. But for now I'm very happy to stop sharing the screen. So our colleague Fredy Cárdenas from Minuto in Colombia can continue with his presentation.
Okay, good morning. I posted the video with the experience and I am pleased to share it. Thank you very much.
Janine, can you start the video again, please?
Okay, sure.
We were a little bit behind there. Thank you. We're going to put closed captions because it's a video that we have pre-record, so everybody should be able to have the closed captions button at the corner of the screen, and hopefully I do a good job with it. Thank you. So if we can start again, thank you. I cannot hear it. The sound is not, I cannot hear it, sorry.
Always been accompanied by the closure of educational institutions, including universities. The only exception has been Sweden, who has maintained face-to-face classes. In Latin America, confinement or quarantine measures were taken almost immediately. Colombia was among the first countries that made the decision to confine. However, in Brazil and Mexico, the measures seem to reopen. In Colombia, the measures taken included closure of borders, closure of domestic and international flights, closure of public and national transportation, closure of all business, shopping malls. Practically the only sector operating are hospitals, public safety personnel, and firefighters. Since 11 May, the government has made a gradual opening of construction and manufacturing companies with biosecurity protocols and special hours to reduce the population in the means of transport. This situation is correlated with the case of infected people, where Brazil and Mexico have the highest figure along with Ecuador, which is a surprising case. One reason, the government is grappling with its worst economic crisis in decades. Colombia is one of the countries with the lowest number of infected. This graph was as of 15 May, but to this day, the numbers have increased, but the rate of increase remains flat. Similar trend can be seen with the case of the cased people. Brazil and Mexico maintain the highest figure, along with Ecuador. Colombia is among the countries with the last number of diseases. is as shown in the graph. The government's decision to perform compulsory social distancing has been taken very seriously, as you can see, with empty cities and with the stop of all activity. This was done in order to prevent the health system from collapsing in the face of a possible excessive increase in COVID-19 case. Of the case of infected people, where are they during their recovery? As the graph shows, most spend their recovery time at home, fewer in the hospital, and a small amount in intensive care units. This is maintaining a good availability of hospital beds and has allowed the health system to maintain its normal operation. It is important to clarify that in Colombia, the amount of testing is insufficient, which means that we do not have a real picture of the case of infected in each situation. So I want to present the case of Minuto University, my institution. It is a private and face-to-face university in Bogotá, the capital. I also want to show how in the middle of the quarantine, it has faced the challenge to continue its classes, develop service to students and constantly support teachers, students and administrators for their good practice. Some context. Minuto, as a university corporation, is part of a Catholic organization called Minuto de Dios, an NGO that for more than 60 years in Colombia has served the most vulnerable communities, offering service, addressing various issues that have to do with humanitarian support, employment, housing, education, culture, student allowance, communication, among others. Minuto is part of the educational action of this NGO. By the founder's decision, the university is Catholic, inspired but not confessional. This allows it to be an open university, and its main objective is to offer education to the population with the greatest vulnerability of low resource and thus achieve the social transformation of these communities. Minuto has 69 operating points located in most of the Colombian region. The number of students is considered the largest in Colombia. Most campuses offer virtual and distance education. The main campus, located in Bogotá, is the only one that offers face-to-face instruction. The majority are undergraduate programs in all fields. It offers 106 programs of study. Some important facts. 73.5% of the student population belongs to the lowest social economic strata as it is designed by the government, 1 and 2. Almost 89% are women. More than 15% are people between the age of 16 and 25. 68% come from public schools, and more than 18% must fund their studies in higher education. When the quarantine started, a crisis committee was formed with the aim of enlisting all the action that were necessary of the service students, teachers, and administrators. The committee checked with teachers and administrators one by one to ensure that they had connectivity and computer equipment in their homes in order to perform their tasks. We delivered computers to those who did not have at home or installed them internet connectivity. We also started webinars for teachers on virtual teaching learning strategies. Doctors and nurses in the university got together in order to offer medical attention. Psychologists started to offer counseling for cases with anxiety, stress, or others via televisit. Another noteworthy action consists of weekly meetings with teachers from each academic program with the academic vice-chancellor, the director of communication, the director of student affairs, and the director of human resources to listen to the experience of the teacher in their virtual classes, the difficulties they have had with the aim of addressing the various risks that each teacher presents. It has become a stage to share experience where teachers say they feel supported by the university administration and with a desire to continue working for the university. Although this is very time consuming and can be exhausting, but everybody is doing it with very good disposition. A campaign was carried out to donate a day of wage to financially support employees who have lower wage and to deliver groceries to their homes. There have also been new partnerships with companies to bring groceries to members of Minuto from the más vulnerable sector in Bogotá. In addition, Student Affairs is offering recreational workshops for members of the community to take advantage of the extra time at home with families and help them to cope with the stress that the confinement might bring. In the case of students, each student's situation at home was checked and based on that, the university provides to the student who needed it with a computer and internet connection. A financial relief package with tuition discount of up to 20% has been delivered. Those with financial aid are not being charged with payments for 3 months. And in addition, those who are most vulnerable are being offered a scholarship covering up to 100% of their tuition. Likewise, webinars for virtual learning strategies were given to students. Students have access to virtual medical care, psychological care, and special follow-up, and support to those who have tested positive for COVID-19. We currently have their case and they receive medical care from university staff. Likewise, they have a variety of virtual workshops in culture and fitness they can enjoy with their families who want to participate at home. Finally, there are several challenges ahead. If the confinement continues, will students be willing to enroll to continue virtually with their preference is a face-to-face education? What other strategies can higher education institutions adopt? Should compulsory social distancing be extended until December? adopting these various strategies has impacted budget allocation for 2020. What support from the government can higher education institutions receive in order to not disrupt their operation?
So thank you for Dr. Fredy's thoughtful presentation. Now I'm passing the screen to Dr. Anatoly.
Hello, everyone. I can see that we have a really representative audience today from Nepal, India, Egypt, Hong Kong, United States. First of all, I'd like to welcome all of you and hope you are doing well. And I want to thank the organizers of this event and Star Scholars Network for it, and thank all of them for inviting me to this presentation. So today I'll try to address several issues by looking into the discourse and positionality of what's going on in Hong Kong and how we perceive the important issues of that are important for the community of international scholars in the city. So I'll address the issues of internationalization, mobility, and agency. So first of all, if we talk about the whole idea, the problem of the pandemic, we should really think about where we are located and how it affects personally each of us or communities to which we belong. So I would like to address the Hong Kong's position. Hong Kong is a world city of 7 million people. And Hong Kong had dealt with the similar problem in 2003 when SARS outbreak took place and paralyzed cross-border travel and social life in the city. At that time, the government of China made attempts to pretend that nothing had happened, but the WHO was resolute to urge the government and international partners be open, collaborative, and so they responded quickly to the crisis. Hong Kong, at that time, Hong Kong suffered a lot. During SARS, Hong Kong lost around 200, they reported 299 people in 2003. At the same time, when I arrived, I lived in Toronto at that time, and Toronto was also affected significantly. However, looking into the problem now, we can see that Hong Kong has learned a lot. And the number of deaths reported recently keep around like four cases, I think. So it's a significant reduction from 299 cases in 2003 to 4 cases in 2020. At the same time, Toronto, which lost, the city which is much smaller, twice smaller in size in terms of population, lost 44 people, according to reports in 2003. But now Toronto keeps the record of 740 cases. So in that regard, I argue that Hong Kong has learned something over the last decade or so, while Toronto has not. And when I look at that and try to understand what were the major factors that influence that type of social learning process, I think that Hong Kong has understood better how to appreciate its research infrastructure. how to appreciate the role of civil society in the governance of the city. When I arrived to Hong Kong in 2009, I was really surprised to see how well the city was managing the avian flu at that time, and how they sanitized the places and promoted public health agenda to prevent infectious diseases. So over time, I also observed that Hong Kong was able to develop that kind of long-standing social practice of wearing masks, regardless of what degree of infectious disease could be evolving over the years, with this small flu or some symptoms which people would respect the social space by protecting themselves, but also protecting others from any kind of infectious disease. So this civil society has developed a very strong sense of vigilance, I would argue. Ordinary citizens have been usually well informed and constructively skeptical when needed, and they learn to push back even when some political actors prefer to trump common sense and rely on medieval traditions of face-saving and hierarchization, crisis or not. So indeed, Hong Kong has been successful in managing the recent calamity. So we also see that how scientific management contributes to governance. The Hong Kong success has been largely driven by a long-standing practice of transparency and accountability in accordance with the internationally reputable standards, not in accordance with political preferences. So the network of 6 globally recognized research universities in the city contributes to building that type of capacity, academically and publicly. So being successful for these research universities implies being competent in research management and relying on international peer review, meritocracy, and recognition of the value of multiple, sometimes competing voices that generate opportunities for constructive criticism and validation of scientific findings. So at the same time, Hong Kong has preserved its kind of quality of encouraging multiple voices. We definitely saw some change over the last year when these multiple voices are not so appreciated by some stakeholders who have no idea how research universities work and who feel that a democratic discourse may depose their personal powers and privileges. So the scientific intellectual discourse thus need more exposure, in my opinion, and promotion for ensuring that alternative views can be heard and better policy formulations can be made, and as various data are questioned and reassessed, as we have seen during this kind of recent pandemic. There are these kind of constant reassessments and questions around what is the problem, what are the symptoms, and what is the problem with the COVID-19. So let me just kind of look into some major issues that are of concern for international scholars. So we in Hong Kong, we've seen that leadership at research universities turned out to provide a wise guidance, actually, in the times of crisis. Because Hong Kong's universities are pretty much embedded into the neoliberal practice and discourse. Performativity of these universities has been noted for years as being crucial to gain the status of world-class universities and being ranked highly. So, but performativity is, however, not only the result. Number of papers produced or prizes obtained is really important, but how this happens, in which particular way these papers are being developed, what kind of research is being done, to what extent the critical mindset involved in creating that kind of product is something that is often disregarded. At the time of the crisis, the research university academics and leadership didn't go into that kind of anxiety which neoliberal universities in the US, Australia, or the UK were showing because of the concerns about the flows of international students and impacts from the loss of revenue. So research universities in Hong Kong were cautious about that kind of anxiety of, what we do and how we perform in the future, whether we would lose ranks or revenue and so on. Instead, the emphasis was placed on the value of international faculty and students, and on issues of sustaining their welfare. So where international students were often lost or stranded, like myself, I'm staying in Canada at the moment because I was advised not to go back to Hong Kong. Faculty said that faculty members and students who stay outside, currently travel, should be cautious about coming back. So I work from my home in Toronto. I know that cases. I saw that my colleague, Dr. Carlos Soto, who was present among the participants, his case was reported in the news, and he was stranded on the ship, that notorious case of the Japanese ship, and with the whole family. Luckily, he was able to escape the dangers of impacts of that kind of situation. So all of us were stranded, but at the same time, we still had the feeling that our communities, our colleagues were really supportive, inviting, and helpful. So at the same time, while the political environment in Hong Kong seems to be getting tougher on diversity of views, I would say the international scientific community remains multi-voiced, and this is something that will continue. I hope for us to maintain respect to each other's differences, but also to have respect as scholars in the community of global science. Following the lessons learned from the political scientific dilemmas during the COVID period in China, Hong Kong, and elsewhere, the international scholars should be more rigorous and vigilant in safeguarding academic integrity. Only when we preserve that integrity, we can argue to sustain the respect that I was talking about, and to ourselves, first of all, but also to the academic profession in general. Just imagine if social sciences, for example, become depreciative of human agency, diversity, rule of law, and other significant achievements that humanity was able to reach after the devastation and horrors of the Second World War. Why would we need then such sciences? What kind of sciences are those that do not enhance the human rights and freedoms and dignity of underprivileged cultures, languages, and histories? What kind of science is that without critical thinking and inquiry and freedom of speech or open disputations? What kind of social science is that promotes instead hegemony and fascism, right? So mobility is, from that point of view, is very important, an important aspect for us to continue to think that we live across open borders. Initially, I understand that it's very difficult issue at the moment, given all the constraints. But an important aspect of this in Hong Kong has been the value of academic travel. The city has really developed as an educational hub because of that type of ability to be internationally mobile. So currently we see a lot of nostalgia for travel in the city among international academics. So private conversations and on social media discussions continue to overflow with all kinds of regrets about canceled conferences, visits, and informal collegial meetings. I think that the significant issue behind this nostalgia is the amount of commitment and time we dedicated to building trust in the past. So Zoom provides a great platform for us to communicate, but at the same time, this is an enclave where we don't really know how to develop trust, to what extent we can trust when our presentations, discussions are being recorded and shared by whom and how. We don't really know that. There's this kind of disappearing lack of intimacy that we would usually have in traditional spaces, right? And at the same time, we also have to rethink how we just have that type of trust disappearing or being redefined because of all kinds of security issues. Like in the past, we would meet somewhere in the hotel or restaurant and we would be protected by, all these important staff members who would organize the space and control the safety of the space at the same time. Now we just can be bombarded in the Zoom rooms with the aggression, provocative issues, and we have to redefine how we really handle those if they happen. So the issue of trust, security become really something else. And research has become also another concern for qualitative researchers in particular, because we have to rethink how we really conduct data collection without being in the field, without understanding how the field really exists, talks, situates participants, and so on. So these very important issues of how we do research in the future are significant concern for many of my students who have to do research projects and dissertations and primarily rely on qualitative research data. So this is something that one big concern for people who used to be mobile. At the same time, I wouldn't really want to depreciate the value of our technology, because it allows us for a better type of communication. Among my students, I've seen a lot of appreciation for people who are shy, who don't speak and don't want to, who really are concerned in the class about how they see themselves in their bodily expression, in their emotional expression, and how they are judged by others in the classroom. So when they have opportunity to hide their face behind behind some avatar, the screen, and so on, suddenly I feel that the quality of intellectual conversation increases in some way, and the expressions acquire different types of tones and depth. Amid all this, I will probably just try to accelerate my presentation given that short time that I have. We have several important concerns about that accumulation of anger that happens pretty much everywhere. We instead of we are definitely this anger definitely emerges because we are being misplaced or under or overemployed, not fulfilling our assignments on time or plans, or becoming separated from whatever freedoms or duties we may have had. And the political world around us is also getting angrier as incompetence and lies of bureaucracy become evident, and when we lose control over comfort zones. So how we are going to deal with that anger? What are the ways to avoid the projection and amplification of anger on environments where we hope to restore health, peace, and social stability? This kind of becomes a significant question to keep in mind for in the time when we prepare a new curriculum or rethink our curriculum. Fear of a new normal will accelerate, I think, because of this increasing presence of security, not only in our crossing of borders, but crossing of boundaries in our thinking when we talk online and being recorded and then posted and shared among unknown people. So that kind of space security will will be definitely something very new to people working in the international fields of science and education. So, with the change in roles of governments, of universities and civil societies, we don't know really. Maybe the change is for better, maybe it's for worse, because on the one hand, we can be probably feeling safer in terms of our physical existence and physical travel, but on the other hand, in terms of our mental, spiritual, or emotional expression, we may not only be we may not be having as much agency as before, or maybe I'm too naive to think that we had too much agency before. Maybe there was not so much agency before. So, and at the same time, we can also see the increase in kind of change in terms of how we perceive equity and fairness, and how we understand those frontline workers who currently take care of our lives, of our security, of in terms of how we exist and communicate. Who are those frontline agencies in the hosting universities, but also to what extent the idea of foreign agency, which is becoming more important because of the trade wars and the emergent Cold War. I think this idea of the foreign agency will be also something that might require our rethinking of agencies. To conclude, I'd argue that we might be rethinking our ways of values in internationalization, and asking questions like, to what extent we're experiencing this kind of revaluation of values in internationalization. The idea of space, to what extent it becomes really a important factor in the construct of successful learning. Besides, I'd say that the social aspect and the global idea of social being divided between the global, national, and local layers of communication and trust is something else that also will affect the way we talk about internationalization, mobility, or agency in global higher education. So these are some kind of points that I would like to bring to your attention and open it for further conversation. So here I'm finishing my presentation, and thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Thank you.
Thank you for the panelist, Dr. Antonio. Can you stop sharing the screen?
I think I've just left the screen.
Okay, good. Thank you so much for the panelist thoughtful presentation. We will have 10 minutes panel discussion. So in the current uncertain situations, many of us might think of some questions. For example, what are the challenges and opportunity to reopen in the fall? So Dr. Fredy, are you interested in answering these questions? Might share your thoughts, insights into these questions.
Okay. Con respecto a la primera pregunta, hay tres aspectos que quiero resaltar. El primero, el profesorado se ha visto desafiado a encontrar resoluciones innovadoras, actuando y aprendiendo sobre la marcha, demostrando capacidad de adaptabilidad y flexibilización de los contenidos y diseños de los cursos para el aprendizaje en las distintas áreas de formación. Pienso que esta experiencia ha generado profesores más creativos, innovadores y flexibles. De alguna manera han salido de su zona de confort.
So Dr. Fredy speaks in Spanish. We have translator Marcio translate for him.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon. Okay, Dr. Fredy just mentioned that he has 3 points that are very important for these questions. Professors has been challenged to find innovative resolutions, acting and learning on the go, demonstrating adaptability and flexibility of the context, and design the courses in different training areas. I think that this experience has generated professors more creative, innovative, and flexible for the outcomes and getting out from their comfort zone. The experience has allowed us to establish a new style of relationship with the professors and the university, and we have learned to have less control and have a better administrative management.
Thank you.
So, esta experiencia ha obligado a establecer otras maneras de comunicarse con los estudiantes y profesores para permitir una comunicación clara, precisa y eficaz. Los procesos de comunicación deben ser dinámicos.
Lastly, this experience has forced to establish other ways of communication with students and professors to allow clear, precise, and effective communication. And most important, the communication process has to be dynamic.
Thanks.
Okay.
So audience, if you have any questions, please use the chat room to type out your questions. Our panelists will be able to answer it in the Q&A, and also they will be able to answer you in the chat room too. So welcome you to type your questions. And then we also have some another questions like what lessons are likely to change higher education in the future given the current situation? So panelists, would you like to share your thoughts on these questions?
Bien, sobre...
Dr. Fredy, go ahead.
Okay, yes. Igualmente hay 3 aspectos a resaltar. La economía se contraerá y en algunos casos la prioridad será el trabajo y la productividad por encima del estudio. Por ello se requiere proceder con austeridad y un manejo ordenado de las finanzas, políticas y construir modelos de sostenibilidad mientras dure la crisis. Ese es el primer punto. Please, Mauricio.
Okay, so firstly, the economy will develop, and in some cases, the priority will be working above college education. Therefore, it will be necessary to proceed to manage finances, policies, and to build sustainable models while the crisis lasts.
Segundo, cuando la educación virtual es bien planeada y los destinatarios la asumen con seriedad como aprendizaje autónomo, se puede generar aprendizaje. Por ello pienso que hay una gran necesidad de reentrenamiento y nueva formación, pero con un modelo nuevo. Hay que rediseñar los procesos de enseñanza y aprendizaje.
When online education is well planned and the recipients take it very seriously and autonomous learning can be generated. So I think that it will be great to re-educate and new train with a new model. We must redesign the learning process.
Finally, surge la necesidad de replantear y modelar los aspectos esenciales de las disciplinas y sus aplicaciones, pues la educación virtual obliga a una mejor selección de lo que se aborda y de su sentido.
To conclude, the needs arises to rethink the model in essential aspects of the disciplines of their applications, since online education requires better selection, so we need to address it on the best way and the best meaning.
Thank you, Dr. Fredy. How about you, Dr. Pilar and Dr. Antonio? Do you have any thoughts to share in response to these questions? Okay.
I'm unmuted now. Can you hear
Oh,
me
yeah,
now?
okay.
So I think that there's some questions in the chat. I was just responding about the online teaching and thing. it is very different from face-to-face teaching. You just have to relearn a whole new approach, pedagogy, and understand the technology. And I think it is possible to deliver high-quality online teaching with the right platforms and the right tools if faculty are trained properly. Not necessarily a substitute, but definitely we can also claim that there's not very good face-to-face teaching. So I think there's going to be a lot of learning opportunities in the future, that we're going to use more online platforms for teaching. And I think that can actually enhance how we do things in the future. I am optimistic about that. I also think that the online meetings with faculty have been very enlightening. I think there's some aspects of using Zoom and all the availability to share documents and chat rooms that actually might enhance meetings, so that we still want to see each other, but I think we're going to probably start seeing more of a hybrid model of how we operate. Universities are in this whole crunch for physical space, so maybe the whole idea of commuting, going places when we can just log in, it does provide some convenience. That it has getting me thinking that maybe we don't always have to go in person for all the meetings all the time, and at the same time be more mindful of commuting. This is great news for the environment. I'm excited for those possibilities of just moving less around, being more efficient, and maybe spending more time at home. So maybe we're going to see an interesting change, still with having opportunities to see each other in person, but not everything in person. This is where my thinking is going right now.
I think Dr. Pilar, you already answered some questions from audience regarding this aspect.
Yes.
Yeah. Dr. Antonio, what do you think?
I'll try to answer the questions that were addressed to me by Pradeep Sharma and Osama Ibrahim. So in terms of online class work, it will be always a great contribution, complementary part to the learning process, but the learning process which relies on online experience only is not the best type of learning. We know that most of the constructivist learning happen in the room when people sometimes talk in discuss some questions in smaller groups spontaneously, while the rest of the class may be focused on something else. So this type of camaraderie that existed in the physical space may not really be always present in the online space, because we tend to regulate it by saying, okay, your time to speak, you work in this breakout session, and so on and so on. So that spontaneity will somehow discontinue if we focus only on online platforms. But at the same time, I think that online platforms do have this kind of value added in general. Regarding the research on a qualitative research in the field in the next 5 years, I think that it might be really difficult for qualitative researchers to do what we did in the past. There's kind of concern about stranger, foreigner, somebody who comes from outside. May that type of social distance in terms of the foreign presence can still be providing us with a more difficult access, or reducing our access to participants, to their honest expressions, to their ability to provide us with the sincere insights. As you probably know, qualitative research depends highly on the quality of feedback or insight from participants. So if trust disappears, then the foreign researcher might not only be getting the same depth of insight as before. I mean, I'm not arguing that the depth of insight was always available for the foreign researcher, but at the same time, that might be further kind of reducing and creating a problem for a high quality data collection in the field. So that is pretty much my major concern, I would argue. Maybe it pushes us then back into our cultures and saying we have to rely more on the culture which we know best, where we have this kind of inbred or ingrained type of feelings, emotions, and we can understand it from the past. But even in the original culture, it may not be the same, because again, of that type of level of concern about security.
Thank you, Dr. Antonio. And we also, given the fact that panelists already answered, many questions from audience, I will take like some questions. For example, we'll take some questions from audience. For example, one audience asked, "What do you think?" Okay, let me see that. What do you think? There should be different strategies taken to build back better higher education in both developed and developing countries. That speaks to what Dr. Pilar said, how we can connect global North and South, global West and East, So how do you think there should be different strategies to build back better higher education in both developing and developed countries?
I can probably start on this. I feel that this particular Star Scholars Network and the efforts by my colleagues, Dr. Krishna Bista and Atam Goli, this shows that this is possible. I mean, this probably needs more of that type of engagement and effort to connect these types of worlds that existed there before and that will continue to exist. The divides, the gaps will continue to exist, but at the same time, these efforts like today's webinar and they definitely reduce the gap.
Okay, thank you.
If I can ask very quickly, I have been very impressed how conferences with thousands of attendees like CIS and now ARA and now NAPSA is doing it. They have put together an entire online program that spans throughout the month. They're getting very creative with synchronous and asynchronous sessions. So I'm actually excited. I know it's very hard. We wanted to travel and go to these places, but in the future, I think there's many lessons to learn that there are advantages of using the platforms with a hybrid model. So I can see, in fact, CIS was already doing a form of online sessions at the same time as the face-to-face session. So this is exciting for me to see that people are not just stopping their work. As much as we can, we have tried to continue doing our work.
Mm-hmm.
And probably we can also think about this kind of CIS and other meetings, which we had as annual meetings. There will be probably smaller meetings across the virtual space and smaller projects and so on, which can be not a better substitute, but at the same time an opportunity to meet it. As an idea of linking scholars.
Thank you. Dr. Fredy, any thoughts?
No.
Okay.
Mauricio, ¿me ayudas?
Thank you. So I can take one more questions. Some students, many audience are international students who are attending our webinar today. They are curious about the possibilities of going back to US and another countries for studying abroad. They want to hear what's your thoughts about the possibility to resume studying abroad program and international travels for students who want to pursue the degree overseas.
So here we have thousands of international students, and that has been a big concern, especially the new ones that need to apply to visas. So we do receive communications from the International Center that is monitoring all the immigration status and how to apply visas right now. The government is starting to get better. However, the university has decided for those international students that are still overseas are not being able to travel because international travel also has been halted in the planet, that they can start online. So here's where, even though we might have face-to-face classes, we are going to still provide the opportunity for those that cannot be here in person, many international students, to log in via Zoom and all these platforms and still take their classes and start their program of studies until they can return. So we're doing that here at Mizzou.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So is there any thoughts or insight you want to share, Dr. Fredy and Dr. Anatoly?
I think in Hong Kong, we haven't really changed anything for students who want to study for PhD. So the processes are pretty much the same. You would need to submit a strong research proposal and justify why your research would be meaningful in the context of Hong Kong, or in terms of comparing Hong Kong or China to other countries or contexts. So from that point of view, there's, we continue to give awards, PhD awards to those who are strong enough. I think Hong Kong is probably the safest place, as I told you, with that small number. We don't have any new statements about people who got COVID since April 19th, as far as I remember. So over the last month, there are no new cases, and the schools and universities are now being open, and we were told that we will resume the academic year in September. So although in a different format, as Dr. Mendoza mentioned, with those types of restructuring of classrooms and public social spaces. So there will be a lot of that change, but at the same time, you know, in terms of the format, in terms of the procedures, in terms of the requirements, I don't think that we are changing anything at this point in time. Again, Hong Kong is a very dynamic place, so we don't really know if the changes of political or social nature that because of this kind of confluence of the pandemic and political issues, whether that might kind of be leading to some changes in the future, but for the coming few years, I don't expect too much.
It's clear that the COVID-19 pandemics really worsens the existing crisis, but also provide opportunities for institutions and academic research professionals to seek alternative opportunity to change the current situation, especially, for example, global higher education. Dr. Fredy, so what's you want to say something? Mm-hmm.
Dr. Shannon, nosotros tenemos varias acciones. Uno tiene que ver con el cuidado. Los estudiantes que salieron del país, hemos realizado un contacto diario con ellos a través de la Oficina de Internacionalización y les estamos haciendo atención psicológica y escuchando sus dificultades, y segundo, buscando la manera de traerlos nuevamente al país, especialmente a aquellos cuya universidad cerraron su operación. Esto es lo primero. Please, Mauricio.
Okay, so we have taken several measures right now inside the institution. The first one is all the students that were abroad in different countries, we have contacted them and gave them psychological help so they can manage this situation. The second thing that we have been doing is that we have been talking with consulates and with embassies in different countries so we can bring those students home. most of the cases where when the students where the universities abroad are closed, so we try to bring them home, but it's a little tricky sometimes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. On the behalf of Star Scholars Network, I would like to thank you, our panelists, Dr. Pilar, Dr. Fredy, and Dr. Antonio, again, for your today's thoughtful presentation, and your time, expertise, and insight are very much appreciated. I also want to thank you, Mr. Mauricio Izquierdo, for your excellent translation service. Allow me to thank you all audience for joining our webinar today, for sharing your questions and concern. We have like over 100 audience participating and attending our webinar today. Thank you for, I also acknowledge the Star Scholars Network for providing us this international forum as an important platform for us to communicate with the public and reach out to researchers, educators, professionals from different field and community members. So please contact us if you have any questions. And also we have upcoming webinars focused on COVID-19 and the economics of education next month in June 13. If you are interested, please register and join us. So for further questions for the panelists and for us, please using this information, it will be great, to seek a collaboration with you in the near future. So by the end, I want to thank you all of you, and I wish you all best and stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the
Thank you
opportunity.
very
It was
much.
wonderful for inviting us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much. And for those colleagues who are waiting for the certificates, definitely you will hear from us. All the participants, those who need certificates of attendance, will receive a copy later on, and in any other announcement. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Have
very
a good
much,
day.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you for
good
this
day.
Adios.
opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Fredy.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.